Now, before we get into our interview with Ben Malek of Malektronic, I want to let you guys know that if you go to Malektronic.com, Malektronic.com, and use keyword Hoppe at checkout, you can save 20%. That is keyword Hoppe, Hoppe. Now, without further ado, here is my interview with Ben Malek, only on Hoppe Hour. What's up? This is Hoppe Hour. I am your host, Ryan Hoppe, and I am here hanging out with Ben Malek of Malektronic. What's up, dude?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. So, one thing I like about you is you have the Chicago heart. Like, you can meet people and you can immediately tell if they're from Chicago. I don't know what it is, but there's like this certain vibe that you can pick up from somebody.
It's the Midwestern heart, as people call it. I mean, I obviously grew up in Chicago, and I love the people from there. They're very friendly. They're very nice. They go out of their way to help you. And, of course, you move to Florida, there's some of those people here, and there's a lot of other people from elsewhere that aren't as nice. So, maybe that's why people from the Midwest stand out more down in Florida.
Isn't it kind of a culture change where you move from Chicago and like everybody up there, not everybody, because there's plenty of rude people in Chicago, but a lot of people have like morals and heart, and then you move to Florida and it's just debauchery and like there's a lot of rude people. There's a ton of good people in Florida and great weather, but it's definitely a culture change where it's just a lot different than the Midwest.
Yeah, I mean, Chicago's definitely a lot more laid back when it comes to normal life, but when it comes to the weather, it's not laid back at all. In fact, it's rough. So, yeah, you obviously can't have everything. I love Chicago. It was a place I grew up in, and even to this day, every time I go visit it, I miss it, except I try to avoid it in the winter. You come to Florida, the weather is nice, but you have to deal with all people that come from all walks of life, and some of them are going to be nice to you, and there's also people that escape to Florida to get away from their backgrounds and their scams that they've been running. I mean, you'd be surprised how many people I've run into down in Florida that have tried to scam me on something. They're not Floridians, they come from elsewhere. And Chicago has that too, but I think Chicago's a town, or it's a city that's a lot more organized. Parts of it that are good, parts of it that you try to avoid. Where Florida's, or especially the Tampa area, it's spread all over. Not to go to the south side of Chicago or west side, you'll be mostly safe. In Florida, crime happens all over, and there's really no safe place. So that's a little bit of the difference.
It is weird. The suburb I grew up in had 4 murders in 5 years. So, like, it's very clean. When you're in a clean, safe suburb, you're pretty much safe.
Yeah, and as you know, the parts of the city of Chicago are very opposite when it comes to that statistic that there is. Not that Tampa's anywhere close to that in a number of murders, and crime is not just about murders and gang violence. It's people running scams, obviously petty theft, burglary, car break-ins, stick-ups at the convenience store. Those are, it's just in general. There's parts of Chicago you feel safe and you can walk around and not have to worry about it. But, unfortunately, this area, the Tampa Bay area, is so big and it's not as well defined, and crime travels. So it's not as easy to be in a place that you can know 100% you're going to be safe.
Here's when you know you're in a bad neighborhood in Chicago. My friend was going to DePaul, and he had kind of a rundown apartment in like kind of near the south side, but like not the worst neighborhood. But one time we went to Speedway at like midnight to get some booze, and normally any other part of the suburb they'll let you go into the Speedway, but they had like a drive-through where you walked up and they had to grab everything, and everything was like, there was like a bunch of like prison bars blocking it from letting you in. And that was when you knew you were in the bad neighborhood, was when they would be like, okay, so you want a bag of Doritos, you want a 6-pack of beer and candy, and they literally wrote it down and they went and grabbed it for you because they did not want you inside. And that was when you knew you're in a bad neighborhood.
Yeah, I've seen that. And sometimes they have a window with a little drawer underneath it.
Yeah.
And then you say, hey, this is what I want, and they'll go pick it up, put it in a drawer, obviously after you've given your money, and then they'll slide it over for you. I feel bad for people that work in any convenience store late at night, or gas station. These places you hear stories about them getting broken into and robberies, and sometimes people are getting shot. Whether it's in Chicago or Tampa, I just, it's obvious. It seems like a more higher risk job to have. I hope they're getting paid well for it. It doesn't seem like they are. I mean, but it's one of those jobs that 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, you're sitting there working, and unfortunately, there's a lot of bad people out there. Even if you hand over the money in the drawer or whatever they come ask for, they could still be violent and want to cause some harm, and it's a bad position to be in.
So when did you move down here to Florida?
I moved down here in 2005. I had spent a little bit of time in Tampa before that. I had a client down here that I was doing some work for, and I missed the winter in Chicago. I mean, completely, because I was down here. There was a year I spent 2 days in Chicago, and when I went back home, it was the summertime, and I realized I missed the winter, and I realized how nice that was. And I was actually getting married at the same time, and spoke to my wife, and I said I could get used to this, just not having to be up in the winters in Chicago. So we decided to take a look and see how the Tampa Bay area is. Came down here, looked for a house, and I remembered I had this giant snow brush for my truck. I gave it as a gift to the doorman at my place in Chicago. I said, I'm never going to come back here. I'm just getting away from the snow and ice, and it was the best decision, as far as the weather's concerned, I ever made.
What was it like living in Chicago in the 90s with Michael Jordan, and you had, I'm really getting into like house and like EDM music from the 90s and 80s, just everything about Chicago in the 90s. What was it like being around that culture?
Chicago was very exciting at that time, and I'm not saying it's not anymore, but obviously my age was younger back then too. I was in my 20s, so I went out all the time. It was always something to do late at night, during the day. As you talked about the Chicago Bulls, they were doing really well. Michael Jordan was a god. I mean, I know these days there's going to be a lot of people that say, oh, he wasn't the best basketball player ever. But the impact he made to the game at the time, it was so big. I mean, he's the one that made the NBA what it is now for the rest of the current players that are well known, like LeBron James and whoever else people think are the great players. And it's hard for people that are growing up now to understand that. But the NBA was just the NBA. It was a basketball league. And when Michael came into the league, he really elevated it, and the viewership, and arenas were getting sold out on away games because he was going to be playing. Same impact that some of the other players have now. But these days, everybody needs a supporting cast, and there isn't one player that has been so dominant and raised not just the team but the entire league. And that's what Michael Jordan did for the city of Chicago. And he doesn't get enough credit now that he's gone and he's retired. But he really changed, Chicago and basketball, and put a, bigger position on the map. When it comes to the clubs and everything, when people were happy, when he's playing and the Bulls are winning and everybody wants to go out and have a good time, and Chicago obviously had a great underground music scene. But again, I haven't been back in a while, and I'm also older. Even when I go back, I'm not going to be going to these clubs or looking for the same thing. But it was a great time growing up there, and had a lot of fun.
There's something about going to a club and like getting buzzed, not too drunk, but like just hanging out, listening to the music, especially if it's a good DJ that knows how to like have a good playlist. There's something really like soothing and relaxing about going to a good club on like a Friday or Saturday and hearing tunes.
Yeah, music has also changed a lot, as you know. I mean, there's two types of music. Obviously, there's electronic music that has always been the same, but even back in the 90s or early 2000s, I mean, there was something called music which has completely changed. But It's and the same thing with the clubs. I mean, they're playing music that you used to be able to go and hang out and have a good time. It's really just I'm being honest. I've grown in the years, and I don't enjoy it as much. When you're younger, you want to be there and you enjoy it, and you don't really care as much about the other people around you. You're part of it. Now, if I ever go to a place and there's drunk people around me, it annoys me, and there's people maybe smoking in your face, and you want to get away from it. You don't want crowds. I think it's something to do with me growing up in age, also.
I'm convinced that I'm never going to grow up with age. I know everyone says you grow up with age, but I think it's because the first 18 years I was alive, I didn't have any siblings, so I lived a very boring life that I feel like for the rest of my life, I'm just going to want to do things. You know what I mean? I can't imagine like settling down with kids.
You always feel that way as you're growing up until you get to that age that, which single guy doesn't say, hey, I want to be dating lots of girls for the rest of my life? But then you get to a point in your life that it breaks and you say, hey, I do want to settle down. I'm tired of going out all the time. I'm tired of meeting all these people, because it gets to be too much at one point. Everybody naturally gets to that point that they do eventually want to settle down. I mean, nobody wants to be the 40-year-old at the club standing in a corner. You make fun of it now, but sometimes you look at it and you say, hey, I don't want to be that guy. And that's when you start thinking about a family. There's a lot of pleasures that are in being single, and there's a lot of pleasures in being in a good family, a lot of pleasures in having good kids. So it's all, I think, as you mature in your life, you see how these things impact you, that's how it starts to affect you.
So how did you meet your wife?
She's actually, she's not from the U.S., she's from Costa Rica, and I was down there for vacation as a single guy, and I liked it. I traveled a lot, and I went to Costa Rica for the first time back in 2003. I had never been there before in my life. I liked it, and I started to go back with my friends all the time. You talk about, going clubbing and partying, and it was we started to enjoy the destination as a place to go and meet people and have a good time. At the time, it was a lot cheaper than the U.S. It's changed since then, but so we were going there a lot with my friends, and after some time, I met her actually through a Costa Rican friend that I had made down there. In a sense, we dated for a long time, and it became more serious, and we decided to get married, and she moved to the U.S. with me.
Now, when you met her, there's that whole cliche corniness of love at first sight, or like, how was it for you? Because like, you'll hear people go like, oh, I knew immediately. Was that it, or did it take time?
Just like with any relationship anyone's ever been in, I don't want to say it's ever love at first sight. I think both me and her had experiences from other girlfriends or boyfriends in the past, and it's just something that we were both more mature about and ready. And again, keep in mind, Costa Rica is a country that English is not their first language, so it's not as easy to meet someone down there. But her English was really good, and she was a really nice girl, and obviously I liked her, and things grew from there. You're always, anytime you meet someone for the first time, it doesn't matter what they look like or how they are. They could look really good from far away, but you get to know them and they're the ugliest person in the world, or it could be the opposite. And I'm lucky enough that she's a very well-rounded person, and she's beautiful, and she's also very nice, and most importantly, she's the greatest mother in the world right now.
How has it been the last 3.5 years being a father?
It is seriously the best feeling in my life. I had been married for 10 years before we had our daughter, and I never once imagined having a kid. We both, my wife and I, traveled a lot, and we still do. And it was something that everybody said, oh, kids slow you down, kids take away from everything. And it's the exact opposite. My daughter, who is 3.5, as you mentioned, has been on over 250 flights. She's been to 30 countries. She's actually, Platinum Pro on American Airlines. That's how much she's traveled. She gets on the airplane, she sits down in her seat, she fastens her seatbelt, and she gets ready for the flight. And the flight attendants come by and say she behaves better than most adults. It's really having her in our life, and I'm not just speaking for myself, but with my wife and I, it's one of those things that I have to tell you, it's like my daughter goes to sleep, and I miss her. I wish she was still awake. I wish I could still talk to her when she's tired and she falls asleep. I almost feel like I wish I could wake her up just to talk to her more and spend more time with her. It's one of those feelings that I didn't think existed, and I think most people don't feel that until they actually see it for the first time firsthand.
Are you nervous about her being a teenager in 10 years, though?
She's not going to leave the house. I mean, it's of course, every year that she ages, every month that she ages, worries me more and more. I mean, people are already asking, when is she going to start school? And I'm like, I don't want her to leave the house. And maybe we got lucky we have such a good daughter, because there's some parents that can't wait to get their kid out of the house. We love being around her. My wife once in a while wants a break, and she says, hey, can you take her out with you? And when my daughter was 6 months old, I'd pick her up and I'd take her to Eddie V's for dinner with me, sit at the bar, not at the bar itself, but in the lounge. And she'd been there so many times that I think she experienced, being around people and being in different countries. It really, I think, helps them grow even faster.
So how did you begin your company?
About 6 years ago, I was in China with my wife. This is when we don't have any kids, and we were going around from one shop to another at a mall. And this is long before anybody knew what Bluetooth speakers were, Bluetooth headphones were. And as we had always done, we went to these little shops, and they kept trying to sell these little tiny speakers. And I kept telling my wife, it's junk. Let's keep moving. Don't waste money on this. Ignore them, because they kept pushing them on us. And we went from one store to another, and every single one was selling these tiny little speakers. My wife eventually on the fourth or fifth store said, let me buy one, which I growled at her. I'm like, why are you wasting money? But she bought one. We went back to the hotel, and I was in the other room, and I hear music coming out. And I asked her, I'm like, where's that music coming from? They had a Bang & Olufsen stereo system in the room, so it's like, oh wow, that it's like, no, it's that little speaker I bought. I said, really? So I went and took a look at it, and I'm like, it's wireless? And she's like, yes. And I'm like, it's battery operated? And she's like, yes. I took a look at it, and I'm like, this thing is great. The next day, we went back to that same mall, went to the store, and we bought like 5 or 6 of them to bring back to give to people as gifts. But as we're doing that, I started to think about it. I said, they don't sell this stuff in the U.S. And they didn't at the time. I know now every corner there's a Bluetooth speaker. But at the time, it was something new, and it was a completely new concept to people here. So we, I had a company already based in Hong Kong. I had one of my employees there go and do some research. We hired an engineer. We hired a factory, and we got everything established a new company, and we started to make the products. We brought them here, and we started to sell them online only. And it was so, I guess it's probably 5 years ago, we sold everything online just through Amazon, and things were just selling out right away, just from being online. So we kept making more, and eventually somebody came up to me and said, oh, we should try to get into retail. But I'll tell you, the biggest problem with retail was that a physical store that you think about, whether it's Verizon, T-Mobile, Walmart, whoever it is, they want to make margin on your product. So if there's a product that we had back then that we had one product that was called the Malibu speaker. It was one of our first speakers. And we used to sell it for $50 online. Well, when we took it to the retail store, they said, well, if you want to sell it for $50, you have to sell it to us for $25. And I said, well, that's below our cost. It costs us more to make it. They said, well, then you have to increase the cost. So we were forced to start selling that speaker for $80 so that they can make $40 off of it, and we can make a little bit of money off of it. And that's, the reality is that's what everything, out there, that's how it all works. There are stores that take smaller margins, but many of the retailers want to double the price of everything they get. And we did that for a while. We were carrying about 500 stores around the country, and we saw our online sales hurt because of that, because we can't sell it online for 50 and then in the store it's 80. The stores don't like that. They want us to sell it for the same price. So we kind of have turned it back around, and we're trying to really try to focus on selling it ourselves more, and control the supply a little bit. It got to be really crazy for a while because we're selling the product for a higher price, but we're making less money because most of the money is going to the retailer.
Now, why should people check out your product? What do you take pride in most about it?
We actually have a trademark on the term "sounds perfect," and from the beginning, we've always tried to make the best product for the lowest amount of price. We have smaller margins than anybody out there. We put more into the product. We don't have the name. We're not a Beats, we're not a Bose, we're not a Sony. These companies have either been around for 50 years or they have multi-billion-dollar corporations backing them up. We're a small company, family-owned, based in Tampa, Florida. But we actually have some of the newer technologies that these companies don't have. We had Bluetooth speakers before these companies did. We had Bluetooth headphones before Bose, or even everybody. What do you think the most popular headphones out there are? Beats?
Probably.
Okay, Beats wasn't around that long ago, and we, for example, had Bluetooth headphones before they did. We had noise-canceling headphones before they did. One of the reasons is because we're a smaller company and we can move faster, and that's what's kind of helped us in a sense. Sometimes we come up with a product, like our true wireless headsets that we had, were before Beats came up with theirs, and we sold everything, and people kept saying, well, we want more, and I said, no, we're not going to make any more. And they said, why? I said, because by the time we make more, there's all these other companies are going to have them out there, and then we have to compete with them. Where we were able to bring them in, sell out, and it was a good product, and it's over with, and kind of our product timeline because of that is not as long as these other companies, but we were able to bring the latest technologies for a lower price and get them out there. We do continue to support the products after that, but we don't want to keep making a product and carrying it for 5 years because by the third or fourth or fifth year our products are outdated.
So where can people find your products if they're wanting to buy some?
Well, we have obviously through our website, which is Malektronic.com. That's the easiest way to get it. And I know nobody knows how to spell Malektronic, so just for that, we have itsoundsperfect.com as a website because that's a lot easier to spell. We're also sold on Amazon. I think Walmart has us online. There's a lot of websites online that sell our products. Obviously, the best way for people to purchase it is through our website directly because then they know they're getting a genuine product. There are, believe it or not, as small of a company as we are, there's fake copies of our products out there being sold. There are people that have stolen versions of our products being sold. There's always all that riffraff that happens, even with a small company like ours. So the best way is to get it from us. But Amazon is also a good source because it actually, they manage that pretty well.
And for listeners of this show, if they go to the checkout and use keyword Hoppe, they can save 20%.
Yes. So, thanks to you and bringing this to their attention, it's we can offer them 20% off our already low prices. So when you go to checkout, just there'll be a place for a promo code or you just type in Hoppe and it'll give you 20% off your purchase.
Well, dude, thank you for lunch. Thank you for being a good friend over the years, and it's been a lot of fun having you on the show.
It's been a pleasure, and thank you for everything you've done. I mean, from the day that you probably remember you were an astronaut, you were helping us out at the Lightning game, and that was a fun time. And gotten to know you over the years. You've been a great help to us too, and hopefully you'll continue to be as successful as you have been.
Awesome. Thank you, bro.
Hoppe. This is Hoppe Hour.